My name is Owen, and for years my home life felt like walking barefoot over glass. When my wife actually laughed the night I told her I'd been laid off and then announced she was done with the marriage, I didn't argue over spoons or curtains. I agreed to every single thing she wanted. She took the house I'd signed for when things were good. She took the car I'd bought outright during better years. She thought she'd taken my dignity too. What she never knew was the one thing I still held. And when she learned about it too late, her whole story came apart at the seams. I met Serena 8 years ago at a small get-together with mutual friends. It was the kind of casual evening where the playlist matters more than the guest list, until she walked in and redefined the room. We talked. I remember thinking, she actually gets how I think. Coffee the next morning turned into dinner 2 nights later. Midnight calls turned into good morning texts. Before long, we were talking in futures instead of maybes. We didn't date forever. We didn't sprint blind either. It was quick enough to feel like momentum, slow enough to pretend we were measuring. I told myself I'd found the missing rib cliché people tease, and still secretly hope is real. At that time, I was a software engineer straight through from college to a solid post. By the time we stood in front of a city clerk and said yes, money was comfortable. My salary handled everything with space left for vacations 2 or 3 times a year. Serena liked nice things, clothes, handbags, the kind of shopping where you don't check a tag, and I liked being able to tell her, get it. It felt good to provide without counting every dollar. From the outside, we looked like a pair on track, clean lines and matching smiles. From the inside, I thought that was the whole definition. But 2 people can stand under the same sun and still be reaching for different heat. I didn't see it then. 6 years in, the company where I had grown up professionally started to level out in a bad way. Growth flattened, numbers slipped. Management called us into rooms that smelled like cold coffee and told the truth nobody wants to tell. Cuts were coming. First casualty bonuses. But that wasn't the line that hooked me. They added that if the company were acquired, any patents we'd created as inventors could be sold independently by us, outside any blanket deal. That changed the picture. I had a software patent I'd pushed across the line mostly on my own time, and I knew exactly what it was worth in the right hands. If an acquisition really happened, I could take it to market on my terms, not for pennies, for the kind of number that changes the way your calendar looks for the rest of your life. That's why I stayed. I had other offers floating in my inbox. I could have jumped to steady pay and new swag, but I believed in the play. And to be honest, I felt a debt to the company that took a chance on me when I was green. At home, the trouble started the minute I told Serena that bonuses were paused. I said we weren't drowning. I said we just needed to ease off the throttle for a bit. She looked at me as if I'd insulted her in public. Then the cold shoulder arrived and moved in. The woman I'd married supportive, or at least convincingly so, faded like a Polaroid left in a window. Everything became status. Everything became optics. Who had what? Who went where? Who posed by what pool? She started comparing me to every man she could name. Once, she asked me flat why she had to live like this, as if we'd fallen under a bridge. We still had our house. We still had 2 cars. We still ate well. We weren't taking 3 vacations a year or stacking designer boxes in a closet anymore, and to her, that counted as suffering. I told her things could turn in a day. I told her I wasn't sitting on my hands. She snorted and said, "Oh please, Prophet Owen, should I wait until I'm in the ground for your miracle?" The sarcasm was a blade. I explained that jumping now might mean watching the bigger play pass me by. She didn't care. "Get another job," she said. I don't want to hear it. Words weren't the end of it. She started coming home late. One night, she didn't come home at all. I asked where she'd been, and she said she'd crashed at a friend's place. "Serena, you didn't think to come back before dark?" I asked, keeping my voice level. She scoffed. "What am I supposed to do here, babysit you?" It was obvious then. She'd slid past disrespect into resentment. She added a line that stuck like a burr. "You're not spending money on me anymore. Don't tell me what to do." After that, every conversation became a monologue I wasn't part of. If I raised anything, she rolled her eyes and left the room like I was a TV she could click off. I got quieter. I pulled in. It felt like I was sharing a house with someone who wanted me to fail just to have an excuse to walk. I still hoped she'd snap out of it. I was wrong. The day the dam really broke was the day the acquisition became real. The company got bought. New owners. New plan. They wanted a lean crew with their own people. I was told kindly that I was out with severance. When I told Serena that night, I didn't expect comfort. That well had been dry for a long time. I said the words, "The company was acquired. I'm being let go. There's severance." She laughed in my face. "I always knew this day would come," she said. "You're just not built for success." There's a feeling where the person you share a bed with becomes a stranger in a sentence. That was it. From there, she took it public. In front of friends, she joked that I'd married her to ruin her life. She said she should have seen it coming. He was never serious, she said, like a punchline. What she didn't know, because I no longer trusted her with anything that mattered, was that I had one card left. When the acquisition was announced, my former manager pulled me aside. "Owen," he said, "that patent, don't let it go cheap. The new owners will want it badly. They'll pay big." He sounded sure. That gave me a quiet ember of hope. I told no one, not even my wife. She'd already shown me I was worth only as much as the money that hit an account. So I held the patent close and waited. A month after the layoff, Serena's contempt slid from sharp to cruel. When the divorce papers arrived, I wasn't surprised. She told me we'd grown apart. When I said nothing, she added, "I've settled too long. I need someone who's going places." That line still hums like neon. I didn't have proof, but every overnight and every contemptuous glance told me she had someone else in her wings. I didn't fight the filing. I hired counsel and signed. Everything she asked for, I said yes to. The house, the car, alimony. I had one condition. Through my attorney, I requested we calculate alimony up front and that I could pay it in a single lump using my severance. That way, nobody came around later to collect if my situation changed. Most importantly, my lawyer drafted and insisted on a clause that neither party could sue for more money later. No future claims under any circumstance. Serena lit up. She truly believed she was walking away with everything that mattered. Her own lawyer hesitated and tried to talk her off the ledge. "This may not be wise," he said. "You never know what might come later." She waved him away. She was focused on her upgrade, and paper got signed. Just like that, the divorce was finalized. No long fight. No scorched earth depositions. She walked and made sure everyone heard the clack of her heels. She told friends she'd taken the house, the car, and cash up front. To her, it was a clean break and a victory lap. To me, it was one chapter closing without me needing to slam the cover. She thought she'd won and left me in the dust. She had no idea the real story hadn't started. After the decree was stamped, I went quiet. While Serena posted champagne photos with a new man and geotags from weekends that cost too much, I kept my head down. I wasn't hiding. I was waiting. Acquisition paperwork doesn't move at social media speed. It took about 6 months for the new owners to comb through everything. By then, 4 months had passed since my signature dried, and Serena walked into someone else's spotlight. Then, the moment I'd prepared for arrived. The new team reviewed our intellectual property. They saw my patent. They wanted it. Not a license, a purchase. They made an offer north of $80 million. By the time documents were drafted and the structure was set, my take would be $67 million. Numbers look different in your head than they do in thin black type on a term sheet. When I saw it in writing, my heart skipped. I kept my face steady, acted like every instruction from my attorney was a light I couldn't afford to run. He told me not to take the money in my personal name. "If this leaks," he said, "people you haven't spoken to in 10 years will suddenly remember your number." We formed an LLC, owned by a trust based offshore. When the wire came, it hit the company, not me. Legally and financially, the walls were thick. There would be nothing with my legal name printed on it that Serena or anyone else could grab. That night, after the last signature was logged, I sat alone in a quiet apartment and let it settle. I didn't buy a yacht. I didn't book a flight to anywhere with a private runway. I didn't post a single photo. I opened a company quietly under the trust. I chose not to draw a salary because there was no need. It wasn't about proving anything to anyone. A year rolled by after the divorce. Serena's life looked great from the angle she published. New outfits, new man, new captions. Then she found out. I still don't know how. Somebody said something to someone. A piece of paper sat somewhere too long. A rumor sharpened into a fact. She learned I wasn't broke. She learned I hadn't failed. She learned the thing she mocked, the job I'd stayed loyal to, was the same thing that made me wealthier than either of us had imagined. Making it worse, she and the new guy had already burned through most of what I'd paid her. Put an expensive taste with poor judgment in charge of money they didn't earn, and you can set a timer for when it's gone. So she did what people do when the mirror turns. She lawyered up and filed to reopen the divorce financials. The claim said I'd hidden a massive payout and that she was entitled to a share. The same person who told me I wasn't built for success pulled me back to court to lay claim to what I built after she left. She didn't realize the window had already closed before she reached for it. The notice arrived. Her attorney's letter said, "He concealed a large payout during the divorce. We demand a share." I laughed. She had no idea how tight the original settlement was. She never read the part she'd signed because she was too busy celebrating. My defense was clean. First, the sale happened after the divorce was finalized. Not during. Not in limbo. After. That makes it separate property, full stop. Second, the patent had been mine from the start. My work, my nights, my code, not something we co-created, and not something she invested in. She hadn't even known about it. Third, the money went to a limited liability company owned by a trust. It never hit my personal account. Finally, the keystone. We both signed a clause agreeing that neither could come after the other for more money later. Her own counsel had warned her. She signed anyway. In court, my attorney laid it all out. The sale date months after the decree. The documentation establishing inventorship well before our marriage began to crack. The structure of the transaction. And the page with Serena's signature next to the "no future claims" language. When the judge asked if I had anything to add, I kept it even. "Your Honor, the sale occurred after we signed," I said. "I disclosed everything required of me." The case could have ended right there, but I didn't stop. I filed my own claim. The agreement wasn't a suggestion, it was a contract. Dragging me to court over something we both agreed was off limits was a breach. I sued for the legal fees I had to spend to swat away a baseless motion. The court agreed. The judge ruled that Serena and her counsel had violated the no-claims clause and ordered them to cover my fees. It wasn't a life-changing sum. That wasn't the point. It sent a message that mattered. You don't get to stomp on people and then cry when the stomp lands on your own foot. After the last order was filed, I wrote a letter. I wrote it because there were words I hadn't gotten to say in the noise. "Thank you for leaving when you did," it read. "I couldn't have done this with you around." It was the truth that stung, even as it freed me. If she had stayed, I wouldn't have had the clarity or quiet to follow the patent all the way through. Her contempt would have pulled me into the wrong fights. She called a few days after the letter arrived. I let the phone ring out twice. On the third, I answered. She was crying. She said she was sorry. She said she'd ruined everything. She asked if we could meet and talk. It was the first time in years she sounded like the person I'd fallen for. It didn't change the facts. The damage was old and complete. "No," I said. "I'm not meeting Serena. I wish you well. But some things, once broken, don't rebuild." When people ask now if I know how she's doing, I tell them the only truth that matters. I don't know, and I don't need to. Peace doesn't invite you to go excavating the rubble that almost buried you. Looking back, I understand something I wouldn't have admitted then. The betrayal wasn't just about the divorce. It was about the person I became when I stopped asking for someone else's approval. And sometimes, the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's a life you don't have to explain.